Imagine standing on top of the world, a conqueror reaching a dream that consumed your every waking moment. The air is thin, biting cold, but a surge of triumph warms you from within. You've just achieved the impossible, becoming the first American woman to summit Mount Everest without oxygen. But then, as quickly as the triumph arrived, it's ripped away. Just hours after reaching the peak, in the unforgiving embrace of the death zone, you vanish. For 9 agonizing years, your story remains frozen in time, a chilling mystery whispered among climbers. Until one British mountaineer, haunted by a promise he made to a dying woman, turns to the world's highest peak and does something no one else dared. What he discovered, and what he sacrificed to do next, would rewrite everything we thought we knew about courage, love, and the enduring power of human compassion. Before we dive deeper into this incredible, heartbreaking, and ultimately inspiring true story, if you're captivated by tales of extraordinary human spirit and unimaginable challenges, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel. Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell, so you don't miss out on more gripping stories that will leave you breathless. Frances Arsent, at the vibrant age of 40, was a force of nature. Infectious smile could light up a room, and her ambition knew no bounds. Life was rich and full for her. Her beloved son Paul was the sun around which her entire world revolved, and her husband Sergei, a legendary Russian climber, affectionately known as the Snow Leopard, for his unparalleled skill on the world's most formidable peaks, shared her audacious passion for conquering mountains. Together, they were an unstoppable duo, drawn to the silent majesty and formidable challenges of the highest summits. But Frances harbored one dream, singular obsession that pulsed within her very core: to become the first American woman to stand atop Mount Everest without the aid of supplemental oxygen. This wasn't just a goal. It was a profound, deeply personal quest. It was a challenge so immense, so unforgiving, that it had claimed the lives of even the most seasoned climbers. It pushed the human body and spirit to the absolute precipice of their limits, demanding everything and offering no guarantees. As she meticulously packed her gear that spring, preparing for her monumental journey to the Himalayas, Frances took a moment to write a simple, heartfelt note to her young son, Paul. She enclosed a hand-drawn map, tracing her path to the roof of the world. "Hi, Paul," she penned, her words carrying the warmth of a mother's love. "We're at base camp. Miss you and love you, Mom." Little could she have known, as she sealed that letter with a kiss, that 9 years later, a compassionate British climber would make a profound decision, one that would dramatically alter the very fabric of her story, transforming it from a tale of tragic loss into a powerful testament to humanity. It was May 17, 1998. Mount Everest base camp hummed with the usual frenetic energy that precedes a summit push. Climbers from across the globe bustled about, their faces etched with a mix of anticipation and apprehension. Yet, amidst this organized chaos, Frances and Sergei Arsent stood apart. They were an anomaly. Like the heavily supported expeditions, brimming with Sherpas, oxygen tanks, and constant radio communication, this formidable couple climbed alone. This wasn't born of recklessness, but of meticulous calculation. A calculated risk taken by two of the most experienced high-altitude climbers on the planet. Sergei, the legendary Snow Leopard, had earned his formidable nickname by conquering the 5 highest peaks in the former Soviet Union. He had even achieved the unfathomable feat of summiting all 3 peaks of Kanchenjunga in a single traverse, an accomplishment so audacious that most elite climbers would uneven consider it. But even legends, even those who dance with the wind on the world's highest peaks, can tragically underestimate the capricious and deadly nature of Everest. Their first attempt on May 20th ended in a frustrating, heartbreaking failure. Their headlamps, their only beacons in the inky blackness, unexpectedly died at the notorious first step, forcing them to retreat. The second attempt, on May 21st, was equally short-lived. They ascended a mere 50 meters before being forced to turn back, their bodies already protesting the brutal conditions. Each failed attempt meant another agonizing night spent above 8,000 meters, deep within the infamous death zone, an altitude where the human body, quite literally, begins to perish. With every passing hour, their strength ebbed, their bodies breaking down under the relentless assault of extreme cold and oxygen deprivation. By May 22nd, Francis and Sergei had already endured 3 torturous nights at this deadly altitude. Any rational, sensible climber would have descended, accepting defeat. They would have chosen survival over an impossible dream. But Francis wasn't rational when it came to this goal. She was consumed by it, driven by an unyielding obsession. At 1 a.m. on May 22nd, in temperatures that could freeze exposed flesh in mere minutes, they began their final, desperate summit attempt. Moving slower than ever, each step a Herculean effort without the life-sustaining kiss of supplemental oxygen. They climbed through the profound darkness, inching their way toward their destiny. What they couldn't possibly know, what the cruel mountain kept hidden from them, was that this decision, this unyielding pursuit of a dream, would separate them forever. One would achieve immortal fame, a name whispered with reverence and awe amongst mountaineers. The other would vanish without a trace, becoming an enduring mystery. Both would be tragically etched into the haunting, often brutal history of Mount Everest. Hours crawled by, each one a testament to their unwavering will. The sun, a golden orb, finally rose over the majestic Himalayas, casting long shadows and revealing 2 tiny, almost imperceptible figures still climbing when they should have already been descending. They were making a fatal, irreversible mistake. One that would give birth to a legend and a tragedy so profound, it would take 9 long years to unravel. Late in the afternoon of May 22, 1998, Francis Arsent stood on the very summit of Mount Everest. She had done it. She had accomplished what no American woman before her had. She had reached the world's highest point without the aid of supplemental oxygen. But instead of the expected surge of triumph, an overwhelming wave of exhaustion washed over her. Her body, pushed beyond its absolute limits, was shutting down. Her movements were slow, deliberate, almost robotic. Beside her, Sergei was equally spent, equally ravaged by the mountain's relentless assault. They had summited dangerously late in the day, a critical error that claims more climbers' lives than almost any other on Everest. The golden rule of Everest is simple, etched in the minds of every mountaineer. The summit is only halfway. Getting down alive is what truly separates success from unimaginable tragedy. As they began their descent in the fading, unforgiving light, neither Francis nor Sergei could have imagined that they were embarking on the most heart-wrenching separation in mountaineering history. Somewhere in the vast, treacherous darkness, amidst the confusion born of extreme exhaustion and severe oxygen deprivation, they lost each other. Biting wind, the blinding snow, the sheer disorienting scale of the mountain swallowed them whole. By morning, Sergei, miraculously, had made it to camp. But Francis was nowhere to be found. The horrifying realization slammed into him with the force of an avalanche. His wife? The woman he had climbed the world's highest peaks with, his partner in adventure. The mother of their young son Paul, waiting patiently at home, somewhere above him on that colossal, unforgiving mountain, alone, in desperate trouble, without a moment's hesitation, without a second thought for his own rapidly deteriorating condition. Sergei grabbed an oxygen tank and some vital medicine. He turned, his gaze fixed on the towering peak, and began to head back up, back into the very heart of the death zone. He was going to save her, or he was going to die trying. No one who truly knew Sergei, the legendary snow leopard, was surprised by this decision. It was precisely what he would do. It was his nature, it was his love. But as he climbed higher, his body screaming in protest with every labored step, searching desperately for any sign of Francis, he had no way of knowing that other climbers had already found her, and what they discovered, what they witnessed, would haunt them for the rest of their lives. A chilling specter in their dreams. An Uzbek climbing team, making their own valiant summit attempt, had encountered Francis near the very peak. The sight was heartbreaking. She was barely conscious, her body ravaged by severe oxygen deprivation and the insidious grip of frostbite. Her condition was critical, teetering on the edge, but she was miraculously still alive. The Uzbek climbers, despite their own dwindling strength and limited supplies, did everything they possibly could. They generously gave her oxygen, attempting to breathe life back into her fading form. They tried, with immense effort, to help her move, to coax her battered body to respond. But they were climbing without Sherpa support, their resources dangerously scarce. Eventually, utterly exhausted and depleted of their own precious oxygen, they were faced with an impossible, soul-crushing choice. They were forced to leave her, leaving behind an empty oxygen bottle, and descend to save themselves. The mountain had already taken so much, but they made one crucial decision, a small act of humanity that would eventually save lives. Before leaving, they clipped her harness to a fixed rope, a lifeline, to prevent her from sliding uncontrollably down the brutal, unforgiving mountain face. It was a final, desperate gesture of compassion. That evening, as the Uzbek team made their grueling descent, they encountered Sergei. He was still climbing up through the darkness, a lone, determined figure, his desperate search for his wife etched into every line of his weary face. They told him where to find her, a location high on the mountain, a beacon of flickering hope in the overwhelming darkness. It was the last time anyone would ever see the legendary snow leopard alive. What happened next, what transpired in those brutal, silent hours, would remain an agonizing mystery for an entire year. But the discovery, when it finally came, would reveal the true, profound depth of love and sacrifice in one of climbing's greatest, most heart-wrenching tragedies. It was May 24, 1998. British climber Ian Woodall and South African climber Cathy O'Dowd were within 300 meters of the Everest summit when O'Dowd spotted something that would forever alter the course of both their lives. A flash of purple fabric, a spasmodic, almost imperceptible movement in the treacherous shadows of the first step. "That body's alive," O'Dowd gasped, her voice barely a whisper against the roaring wind. "I'm going to have a look." What she found would haunt her dreams for years to come, a chilling tableau frozen in time. Lying in a grotesque, inverted V-shape, still grimly clipped to a fixed rope, was a woman. Her skin, eerily white and smooth as porcelain, was a telltale sign of severe frostbite, giving her the appearance of a fragile sleeping doll. Her long, dark hair fanned out around her face, a striking contrast to the harsh, unforgiving rock. Her features, even ravaged by the mountain's brutality, held a haunting beauty. Then, impossibly, the woman opened her eyes, huge, dark voids in the thin, unforgiving air. "Don't leave me," she whispered, her voice a thin, reedy plea. "Don't leave me here to die." O'Dowd felt a wave of nausea, a sickening lurch in her stomach. The woman looked so much like her, similar age, similar features. For a terrifying, fleeting moment, O'Dowd felt as if she were staring directly into her own possible, horrific future. "I am an American," the woman said suddenly, her words gaining a touch more clarity. "I am an American." That's when the horrifying realization hit them. It was Frances Arsent, the bubbly woman who had sat in their base camp tent just days earlier, sharing tea and stories of family, talking so lovingly about her son Paul back home. Ian Woodall arrived with his Sherpa team. Nearby, they found Sergei's ice axe and rope, stark evidence of his desperate, valiant attempt to save her. But there was no sign of the legendary Russian climber himself. The empty oxygen bottle that the Uzbek team had left was still beside Frances, a cruel reminder of the fleeting help she'd received. Her down gloves were scattered nearby, abandoned in a bout of hypothermia-induced delirium, which made her feel dangerously, deceptively warm, prompting her to shed protective clothing. For over an hour, they tried everything. They attempted to pull her into a sitting position, but her body was completely limp, unable to support its own weight. They tried to maneuver her arms into her jacket sleeves, but her motor control was gone. When they attempted to make her stand, her legs crumpled beneath her like cooked spaghetti. "If you can help us, we can try and move you down the mountain," Woodall implored, staring directly into her face, desperately searching for any sign of a coherent response. "If you don't, you're going to die." There was nothing. She was conscious, but her mind had already succumbed to the mountain's relentless assault. The mountain had taken her mind even before it claimed her life. The temperature hovered at a brutal -30 degrees Celsius. Standing still for over an hour, the rescue team themselves were beginning to suffer from the insidious onset of frostbite. They faced an impossible, soul-destroying choice: attempt a rescue that would almost certainly kill them all, or abandon a conscious woman to die alone on the world's most desolate peak. "Why are you doing this to me?" Frances asked, her voice barely audible, a mournful whisper. Those words, born of oxygen-starved confusion, cut deeper than any icy wind. She didn't understand that they were trying to help her. In her oxygen-starved delirium, she believed they were tormenting her. The decision came without discussion, a silent, painful consensus. Even the Uzbek climbers, who had tried to help her the day before, had reached the same agonizing conclusion. It was too far gone to save. As they reluctantly prepared to leave, Frances had stopped talking. She seemed to sink into a profound, peaceful unconsciousness, the mountain finally granting her a semblance of quiet. Kathy O'Dowd lost all desire to reach the summit. "I climb because I enjoy it," she would later say, the memory of Frances forever etched in her mind. "After finding Fran, there was no way reaching the top could have given me pleasure." They left her there, still clipped to the guide rope, still impossibly breathing. It was the last time she would be seen alive. But the mystery of what happened to Sergei was just beginning, and the story of Frances herself was far from over. Frances Arsent tragically died alone on May 24, 1998, still clipped to that guide rope high on Mount Everest. The woman who had achieved her ultimate dream, becoming the first American woman to summit Everest without supplemental oxygen, had paid the ultimate, unimaginable price. But what had become of Sergei, the legendary snow leopard? His fate remained a haunting, unanswered mystery that tormented everyone who knew their story. The last confirmed sighting of Sergei was when the Uzbek climbers encountered him, bravely ascending through the darkness on May 23rd, carrying oxygen and medicine, a desperate husband on a mission to save his beloved wife. After that, he simply vanished, swallowed by the thin, unforgiving air of the death zone. Had he reached Frances? His ice axe and rope, found tragically beside her, suggested he had. But where was his body? How had he died? Back home in Colorado, 10-year-old Paul DiStefano waited with the innocent hope of a child for news that would never come. His mother's last letter, with its cheerful message and hand-drawn map, became a heartbreaking, cruel reminder of dreams that had turned into the most terrifying of nightmares. But on Everest, Frances's story was just beginning its most disturbing, undignified chapter. Her body lay in full, tragic view of the main climbing route on the north side of the mountain. Every single climber attempting to summit from that direction would have to pass her. In her distinctive purple jacket, with her seemingly peaceful expression, her dark hair fanned around her face like a tragic sleeping beauty from a macabre fairy tale, she became a grim, morbid landmark. Climbers began to call her Sleeping Beauty. Season after season, expedition after expedition, hundreds of climbers passed her body. Some stopped, their hearts heavy with respect and sorrow. Others hurried by, disturbed by the haunting sight, their own mortality painfully present. A few, shockingly, took photographs that would circulate on the internet. Turning her tragic death into a ghoulish, exploitative tourist attraction, turn right at the guy with the green boots. Climbers would instruct, referring to another body that served as a navigation point. Turn left at the woman in the purple jacket. There was no dignity in it, no respect. The cost of recovering a body from that extreme altitude was estimated between $40,000 and $100,000, a staggering sum. The technical challenges were enormous, seemingly insurmountable, and the ethical questions were even more complex. Who had the responsibility? Who had the right? For 9 long, agonizing years, Frances Arsent remained exactly where she died, a frozen, silent monument to both the soaring heights of human ambition and the profound depths of human tragedy. Thousands of people saw her, hundreds passed within mere feet of her lifeless body. But no one, absolutely no one, did anything about it. Until 2007. When one man decided enough was enough, the very same British climber who had abandoned his own summit attempt to stay with her in her final, desperate hours couldn't forget those agonizing whispered words, "Don't leave me here to die." He had left her to die because at that moment he had no other choice. But now, 9 years later, Ian Woodall was coming back to keep a promise. A silent, deeply personal vow he had carried in his heart for nearly a decade. What he was planning would be unprecedented, dangerous, and absolutely, unequivocally necessary. The expedition Woodall meticulously organized was simply and profoundly called the Toe of Everest. Its mission was unlike any other in the storied history of mountaineering. Woodall planned to return to that exact, desolate spot at 8,500 meters. an altitude higher than any mountain outside the Himalayas, to finally give Frances Arsent the dignified burial she so profoundly deserved. The logistics were staggering, the risks enormous. Moving a frozen body at that extreme altitude would require extraordinary strength, an almost impossibly perfect window of weather, and courage of a magnitude few possess. One single mistake, one misstep, could easily create more casualties. But Woodall had another, equally compelling reason for this deeply personal mission. In 1999, a member of the Mallory and Irvine expedition had finally, agonizingly, solved the mystery of what happened to Sergei Arsent. Jake Norton discovered the Russian climber's body lower on the mountain face, tragically killed in a fall while attempting to rescue his wife. The evidence was clear, chilling, and heartbreaking. Sergei had indeed reached Frances after the Uzbek team left her. He had desperately tried to save her, leaving his ice axe and rope beside her before attempting to carry or drag her to safety. But the overwhelming effort, the brutal conditions, had cost him his life. And Frances, too weak to move on her own, had remained where he left her. It was a love story that ended in a double tragedy, a husband's ultimate selfless sacrifice that went unwitnessed, unrecorded for years. The snow leopard had died as he lived, attempting the impossible, driven by an unyielding desire to save the woman he loved. Now Woodall wanted to honor both their memories, to bring a measure of peace and dignity to their final resting places. As his team established base camp in 2007, Woodall articulated his profound motivation with quiet resolve. "At the back of my mind, I hoped someone would eventually do something for her," he explained, his voice etched with years of reflection. "But the only reason anyone would be up that high is if they on their way to the summit or on the way down. In either case, you can't really devote the hours required to bury a corpse. It needed a dedicated mission." This was that mission. The climb to Frances's location would take days, a grueling ascent against the elements. The work of moving her body would be physically exhausting, an agonizing struggle in an altitude where every single breath is a desperate fight for survival. The weather window for such an operation was agonizingly narrow. One sudden brutal storm could trap the team in the death zone with no hope of rescue. But Woodall had made a promise. 9 years earlier, as he had walked away from Frances Arsent, leaving her to die alone on that unforgiving mountain, he had vowed that someday, somehow, he would return. He would return to give her the dignity in death that she had been denied in life. That day had finally, mercifully come. May 23rd, 2007, exactly 9 years after Frances Arsent spoke her last. Desperate words to another human being, Ian Woodall stood beside her body once again. She looked exactly as she had in 1998. The extreme cold and thin, dry air had preserved her perfectly, like a chilling time capsule of that terrible, fateful day. Her purple jacket was still bright, a vibrant splash against the stark gray rock. Her dark hair still framed her face, eerily serene. She still looked impossibly like she was merely sleeping. But now, finally, after 9 long years, someone had come to wake her from her agonizingly long slumber. Woodall and his dedicated team had carried an American flag all the way up the mountain, a symbol of honor and respect. In a brief but profoundly moving ceremony at 8,500 meters above sea level, they gently draped the flag over Frances's body and offered a solemn prayer. For the first time in 9 years, she was treated not as a macabre landmark, not as a grim cautionary tale, but as a human being who deserved profound respect and dignity in death. Then came the difficult, heartbreaking work. Moving a frozen body at that extreme altitude pushed the limits of human endurance, both physical and emotional. Every action, every strained movement required enormous, agonizing effort in the thin, biting air. The team worked methodically, carefully, with a reverence that transcended the physical task. They weren't just moving a corpse, they were fulfilling a sacred obligation, a deep human need to right a profound wrong. Slowly, respectfully, they moved Frances to a lower, less exposed location on the mountain face, placing her where she would no longer be visible to passing climbers. They then meticulously built a simple cairn of rocks, the only burial possible at that unforgiving altitude. For the first time since 1998, climbers attempting Everest's north route would no longer have to pass Sleeping Beauty. She had finally been laid to rest with the dignity she deserved. Her long, silent vigil, ended. Woodall later reflected on the mission, his voice a quiet testament to the weight of his promise. "This will be my last expedition," he stated, a sense of completion in his words. "So I thought it would be fitting to give something back." But the expedition accomplished far more than just moving a body. It honored the enduring memory of both Francis and Sergei Arsent, a couple whose profound love story had become one of mountaineering's greatest tragedies, and, paradoxically, one of its greatest examples of selfless sacrifice. The woman who dreamed of being the first American to summit Everest without oxygen had, against all odds, achieved her goal, even if it cost her everything. The husband who could have saved himself had chosen with ultimate bravery to die trying to rescue the woman he loved. And a British climber who had carried the crushing weight of guilt and sadness for 9 long years had finally found a way to transform unimaginable tragedy into something deeply meaningful, profoundly human. Today, Paul DiStefano, the 10-year-old boy who said goodbye to his mother in 1998, is a grown man, carries with him not just the heartbreaking memory of her last letter, but the profound, comforting knowledge that strangers bound by a shared humanity cared enough about his mother to risk their own lives, ensuring she was treated with the dignity she deserved. Francis Arsent's story, etched into the very fabric of Everest, reminds us that sometimes the greatest victories come at the highest possible cost. It teaches us that love in its purest and most powerful form can drive people to attempt the seemingly impossible. And it profoundly reminds us that even in death, even on the world's most unforgiving mountain, human compassion can, and must, triumph over indifference. She vanished from Mount Everest in 1998, a ghost in the death zone. 9 years later, a British climber, driven by an unwavering promise, did something that proved the very best of humanity endures, even in the worst of circumstances. He kept a sacred vow, a promise that honor demanded, but few would ever have fulfilled. In doing so, he gave the sleeping beauty of Everest something far more precious than any summit. He gave her peace. The story of Francis and Sergei Arsent, and the remarkable dedication of Ian Woodall, reminds us that while mountains can be ruthless, the human spirit, driven by love, courage, and compassion, can be even more powerful. Their journey, etched into the icy slopes of Everest, speaks volumes about the incredible sacrifices we make for those we love, and the profound impact one person's sympathy can have on the final resting place of another. If this story touched your heart, or if you found yourself captivated by the raw emotion and immense bravery woven into its fabric, please share your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing from you. And do not forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more true stories that explore the incredible depths of human experience.